need to prepare, they need to check on childcare, all sorts of arrangements they need to do. So when I asked the Leader of the House a fortnight ago, he said he'd be announcing it in the normal manner. But this is not normal times. Mr. Speaker, we've got a confluence of COVID, a confluence of events, COVID and Brexit, all coming at the same time. And this uncertainty is not good for the House, but it's also not good for businesses. Listen to the Food and Drink Federation's chief executive, who said at the Bayes Select Committee, how on earth can traders prepare in this environment? We will promise frictionless trade. What we got was lorry parks, red tape, forms and a border in the Irish Sea. Now, the government has reneged on the Withdrawal Act and then on Monday asked the troops to vote for something only to change its mind on Tuesday. Now, when will the Prime Minister come to the House? Because we've already got an arch-Brexiter, Sir Jim Ratcliffe. He doesn't care about sovereignty. He's taking his business to Germany. When will the Prime Minister come back to the House and explain exactly what's going on? Can he do that on Monday? And where's the vaccine minister? I know he was sitting with the Secretary of State for Health, but we haven't heard anything from him. We've got the vaccine czar who's resigned. She's appointed her deputy, and then she's given money out to friends of the government. Nobody has come to the House to tell us what's happening about the rollout of the vaccine, about the criteria that's going to be used. Why is the vaccine minister so silent? Now, I don't know if he's seen, but the Procedure Committee published their report on Monday, Procedure under Coronavirus Restrictions. Now, he will know about the motion on the 24th. They've asked that that's tabled again, and it's done in a proper fashion, given the conditions. Now, what they've also recommended was that the call list, where honourable members decide to put their names on a call list and then withdraw it, hence collapsing the business, as they did on the 24th. Those are the two important recommendations that need to be debated. And most importantly, Standing Order 47, when they've asked for no injury time to be added, in very short debates, when it's 5 minutes or less. It helps the Speaker and the Deputy Speakers to organise business, and it's fair to honourable members. When will the Leader bring back a motion for all those recommendations? And can he, and I know he placed a letter, can I thank him for placing the letter in the library about the International Development Committee? I think it's important now to amend standing orders, because the two committees are doing, the select committees are doing different things. The DFID committee, which actually was in existence since 1969, never had a department to shadow until very recently. They're now looking across different government departments, and so standing orders should reflect a change of name. This is about transparency and accountability of public money. Could he say when the standing orders will be amended? And today, Mr. Speaker, it's Human Rights Day. Her Majesty's opposition is proud that people of this country were the framers of the Declaration on Human Rights, which then became the Convention on Human Rights, which then became the Human Rights Act. Now, I think the Lord Chancellor needs to come here and explain his article where he says the judges can influence policy. They can't. And firstly, how is the Lord Chancellor telling the judges what to do? If he reads their judgments, they are very careful not to interfere with policy. And then he says that the government doesn't have preconceived ideas. Well, actually, it was in the manifesto, and minister after minister has come to the dispatch box to actually say they're going to repeal the Human Rights Act. So what is the point of the review? This goes back all the way to Magna Carta. It's about the rights and obligations of our citizens, and it must not be changed, because there is a letter coordinated by 114 well-known organisations who said, please don't touch it. This is a sad next chapter, isn't it, to our island story, that we don't respect all the rights from Magna Carta onwards, which I know he's very keen on. Now, Mr. Speaker, we say goodbye and thank you to Eric Hepburn. You and I and David Liddington were in the chamber when Eric was there on that. When PC Keith Palmer was murdered, and he came to the House and explained what was happening. He's also been part of the change. We thank him for all his work and wish him well in the future. And you will have seen, I'm sure, Alika and Gabriella lighting a candle for their parents, Anushe and Nazanin. Each day that we have the COVID virus is the day they're separated from their parents. And Luke Simon's parents are in Cardiff and his family is in Yemen. I ask again that something be done, that they can be released before Christmas. And finally, I want to wish everyone in the Jewish community a happy Hanukkah as they light their first Hanukkah candle.
Leader of the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may I join the Right Honourable Lady in wishing members of the Jewish community a happy Hanukkah, and Lighting candles is something done very often, as the Right Honourable Lady will know, in the Catholic Church as well, and lighting candles is a very good religious symbol. May I also thank Eric Hepburn for his service to the House, which has been very impressive and has led to a professionalisation of security within this House, and wish his successor well. And I absolutely agree with her that British citizens detained abroad unfairly and illegally ought to be released. The government is doing what it can, and I can reassure the Right Honourable Lady that every week I write to the Foreign Secretary reminding him that this issue has been raised in the House. Now let me come to the other issues that the Right Honourable Lady raised. I would dispute very strongly that the usual courtesies are not being observed, that we are in a time where we are waiting for the end of a very important negotiation. That very important negotiation may have legislative consequences. It would be absolutely disgraceful if this House were not able to facilitate any ratification of any deal that may or may not come. We have a duty to the country to ensure that the House of Commons is not an obstacle to ratification. Now, if this means there is a degree of uncertainty about business, well, that is simply the political reality, and it is an important political reality that we should embrace rather than complain about, and I'm surprised at the Right Honourable Lady that she would complain about it in this way. There will be change on the 1st of January. That is absolutely clear. And the reason the bill was changed midweek was because of the success of the Joint Committee, because of the success of my right honourable friend, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, who managed to get a deal so that 98% of goods going from GB to Northern Ireland will not need to have any tariffs paid on them, and that all goods coming from Northern Ireland to GB will not need export declarations. So it has been a real achievement to ensure that what we legislated for was actually going to happen, and we should be proud of that, and we should actually commend the wisdom of Her Majesty's Government in bringing forward the UKIM bill in all its glory, which helped the negotiations succeed. As regards the rollout of the vaccine, there will be a debate on Monday on COVID, and that's a matter when it can be raised. So I'm always asked for debates, Mr. Speaker, and when I provide them, the Right Honourable Lady ignores them. But we've got one. She can raise the questions, and other honourable and right honourable members can do so. The Right Honourable Lady also refers to the Procedure Committee and its plethora of recommendations, which the Government will of course reply to in accordance with the Osmotherley principles, though I would say that I think that injury time encourages interventions, and interventions are an essential part of debate. So I would be nervous about taking away something that adds to the flow of debate. I'm delighted that she's pleased about the Overseas Development Committee being retained. It has been going, as she said, since 1969, which is a vintage year, Mr. Speaker, because it happens to be the year of my birth, so I have a certain prejudice in favour of that date. But I think we've come to a good solution to ensure proper scrutiny, and it reiterates the government's commitment to scrutiny. Now let me come to Human Rights Day, Mr. Speaker, because in our island story, which the Right Honourable Lady referred to, we should be so proud of the fact that we have led the world in having a proper protection of the subject in relation to the state. Bear in mind that in 1215 at Runnymede, what they did was confirm ancient rights which they thought had been drawn up by Edward the Confessor, almost certainly incorrectly as it happens, but the principle was that they were confirming ancient rights, not inventing one. Exactly the same happened when habeas corpus was passed into law in the reign of Charles II, that they were confirming rights of antiquity so that you could not have the illegal detention of people without the prospect of a trial, without the process of a court. And it's worth bearing in mind that at that point in France, it was still possible to hold people on the word of the king. There were letters of cachet that meant that people could be locked up simply on the word of the king. And then there's, in the 18th century, the Mansfield judgment, one of the judgments we should be proudest of in this House, the understanding that in the United Kingdom there is no such thing as a person who is not free. And then we led the world democratically in 1832 with the Reform Bill. We are a model to the world of rights that are our rights, are United Kingdom rights, and other countries have followed behind. We should recognise that we know how to do it, and we've done it extraordinarily well to the prosperity of the British people and the solidity of our Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was absolutely gobsmacked, just thinking I wish I could have been such a class act as my right honourable friend, the Leader of the House, with his vast knowledge as a real history lesson. Thank you. He caught me by surprise. I wanted to ask the Leader what the news is of Elizabeth Tower. We're all aware that it was very much over budget and over time to be restored. It's an absolutely iconic part of our great United Kingdom history, and in particular I'm keen to know what disability access has been installed in Elizabeth Tower so that everybody across the UK can access that wonderful site. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the Right Honourable Lady, my right honourable friend, has led the way in this because it was her pressure to ensure that the Elizabeth Tower should have disabled access when she was leader that ensures that one of the ventilation shafts is going to have a lift in it which will make it possible for disabled access. The lift will improve safety and help reduce the time it would take to evacuate a mobility impaired person from the tower. And in more general terms, the Elizabeth Tower team is currently back working at full productivity, and the work is continuing across all sites in line with advice from the government. The Commons is working with its supply chain to update its programme of work, ascertaining and limiting the impact of COVID-19 on all projects. So that is encouraging that the work is going ahead full steam, but also there will be disabled access, and I thank my right honourable friend for the contribution she has made to ensuring that.
Let's go to the SNP spokesperson up in Scotland with Tommy Shepherd. Tommy Shepherd.
Mr. Speaker, it seems the Conservative Party's toxic political cocktail of British exceptionalism and arrogance has hit the buffers of the real world. We await Sunday, but if there is a deal, it will be a sordid and pitiful affair. Can the leader at least answer this? In what fashion will the government involve Parliament in this endgame? Will it put down a resolution, introduce a bill, table a statutory instrument, or simply make a statement which we can neither amend nor agree? And with 3 weeks to go, if the government does not yet know how it will present to Parliament our future relationship with the EU, isn't this not only a failure of statecraft, but a shocking level of domestic political mismanagement? It seems that the people of Northern Ireland will get to march to a European beat after all. In consequence, the government has withdrawn Part 5 of its internal market bill, but the assault on devolution remains. So can we have a debate on why Scotland is the only nation within the UK that is getting a hard Brexit against its will? If a bespoke solution is available for Northern Ireland, then why not Scotland? The arguments against are unconvincing. A border is a border. It has the same legal and economic status whether on land or on the seabed. Yesterday, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster was effusive about what he called the primacy of democracy, saying it is for the people of Northern Ireland to decide their future. Can we debate why the government takes that view regarding one part of the UK, but not another? And can I give him another opportunity to say whether he will respect the outcome of the Scottish general election in May next year, something he has refused to do so far? Finally, Mr. Speaker, today is International Human Rights Day. Given his comments a moment ago, will he support a debate on the Justice Secretary's plans to review the Human Rights Act and give an assurance that it will not weaken the protection of the European Court of Human Rights or the authority of the devolved administrations in these matters?
Mr. Speaker, what a joy it is, as always, to hear from the honourable gentleman who is such an uplifting advocate for the United Kingdom, because he comes on and he talks about sectionalism. What is the most sectionalist party? Oh, good heavens, it's the Scottish National Party that is the one that is trying to split up the United Kingdom. So I would say pot and kettle, but it has to be said that there is no kettle, only a pot. He then says that Her Majesty's government believes in the primacy of democracy, unlike, it has to be said, the Scottish government or the SNP, because they said, yes, what? Quite right. The honourable gentleman doesn't believe in democracy. He's against it because there was a vote in 2014 which was a generational vote. Now, the honourable gentleman may think that a generation is the generation of the fruit fly, but I think the generation in question is the generation of a person, of a voter, and we have not got close to a generation. But it's fascinating. the honourable gentleman doesn't want to talk about the success of the United Kingdom, the £8.2 billion provided by the UK taxpayer to help Scotland, and he doesn't want to talk about the disaster that the SNP is at the moment, its failures in governing Scotland, its failure in education, its failure in health, its failure in law and order. But he doesn't want to get on to the rather juicy gossip that's coming out of the SNP as well. What do we have? That the chief executive of the SNP, when he's at home, never talks about politics to the First Minister. No, of course not. He only talks about cooking. Well, it makes it sound as if his household is even more old-fashioned than mine, because I must confess that in the Rees-Mogg household we spent a lot of time talking about politics, and I must confess that it seems improbable that such a highly politicised family never talks about such interesting things. So Scotland is beginning to see through the SNP. We had a vote, the vote has been respected, and we also had a vote on Europe, and that vote is being respected too.
Let's head up to Yorkshire with Sir Greg Knight. Sir Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Leader of the House is aware, the hospitality sector suffered very badly during the pandemic and continues to do so. But is he aware that many businesses, including pubs, still need more financial aid to enable them to survive? So irrespective of any future debates, can we have an assurance today from the Leader of the House that the plight of the hospitality sector and the financial support given will remain under constant review by the government? In a number of areas like East Yorkshire, as he may know, the sector is vitally important to the local economy.
Mr. Speaker, our hospitality sector and our pubs are a glory of the British nation and provide much pleasure to people as well as employment and business activity. So efforts have been made, very serious ones. So VAT has been reduced, cash grants of up to £3,000 a month have been made available, money has been made available to local councils. But the government greatly understands and appreciates the problems that the hospitality have faced during the lockdowns that have been necessary because of the coronavirus. So support has been made available. Ultimately, this is taxpayers' money that is being spent, and it's right that the government should continue to work out how it can support that sector, but there is not ultimately unlimited money.
Let's head to the chair of the Backbench Committee, Ian Mearns.
Very grateful, as always, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Leader of the House for the business statement. And Mr. Speaker, I note that the matters to be raised before the forthcoming adjournment debate next Thursday will be held in government time, not Backbench Business Committee time. And I assume that is to allow the government flexibility to change things should they need to do so. But could I also ask the Leader of the House that any time that might become available, even at relatively short notice, we can have backbench debates oven ready, Mr. Speaker, to fill any slots that might open up to the House. And can I also echo the comments of the previous speaker? The hospitality sector across Tier 3 North East needs urgent support. The policy needs urgent review and upgrade, or many businesses and jobs will be lost. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, I live in the midst and represent a large Orthodox Jewish community here in Gateshead. So can I echo the comments of my right honourable friend, the Shadow Leader, and the Leader of the House in wishing the whole community that I represent a very happy Hanukkah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. An oven-ready debate sounds like a very tempting idea. The honourable gentleman is absolutely right. The forthcoming adjournment debate will be in government time. He is also right that this does allow for flexibility. It's important to recognise that there is a balance to be struck between providing time for debates where members may do a great deal of preparation, a great deal of work beforehand, and then finding that government business has to supersede them potentially at relatively short notice, be that statements, debates, or even legislation in the event of a deal. And therefore I hope the House will understand that next week particularly we need to maintain flexibility, but that I am well aware of the standing order requirements to provide backbench business debates. He mentions the hospitality sector. There's not a great deal for me to add to what I said to my right honourable friend, the member for East Yorkshire, but it is something the government is concerned about, and it being raised by so many members is a reminder of this House's facility to seek redress of grievance for the constituent, and that is a proper thing for this House to be doing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My right honourable friend once revealed to the House that he likes a good, proper, plain British banger. However, proposals to restrict the online advertising of certain foods are currently under consultation. If accepted, they would ban farm shops, butchers, restaurants and pubs from North East Somerset to Dewsbury advertising their delicious bangers on social media, local newspaper websites and even email newsletters. Given the pervasive impacts of the proposals and the flimsy evidence base, will my right honourable friend commit to holding a debate before any proposals are taken forward?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend raises an exceptionally important point. In 2020, of all years, I think it's right that we do all we can to support small businesses in our food and hospitality sectors. I must confess I wouldn't hold up my own diet as being a model for anybody else, child or otherwise. I have a predilection for cream eggs, which is probably not to be encouraged, and I did even once have a deep-fried Mars bar, which was absolutely delicious. However, and I'm glad to see that there's something with which I agree with the Scottish National Party. Reducing obesity levels is a key priority of this government, and rightly so, bearing in mind the effects of obesity on COVID. And our ambition is to halve childhood obesity by 2020. However, I understand DHSC and DCMS are currently running a consultation on how to proceed with their proposed policies on food advertising. And I would urge all honourable and right honourable members, and indeed members of the public, to respond. And my right honourable friend might like to write in and remind people that a Mars a day helps you work, rest and play.
I think we need more work at the moment. Right, let us head up to Angus Brendan McNeill. Angus Brendan McNeill.
Tapple of indeed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to pay tribute this morning to a valued member of staff of the House, my former clerk of the International Trade Select Committee, Lydia Menzies, who sadly passed away last week at the age of just 38. Lydia was a fantastic clerk, knowledgeable, helpful to committee members, a friend and mentor to her colleagues as well. Lydia's wonderful sense of humour and wit made working with her enjoyable for everyone. In fact, the tie I'm wearing this morning was a present from Lydia of her own tartan when she left the committee. Such was her nature. She gave presents at moments like that. Mr. Speaker, it was indeed a privilege to work with Lydia. I understand also the Leader of the House worked with her too. Doubtless the Leader will join this morning in paying tribute to Lydia. The thoughts of myself, the tremendous ITC staff and colleagues from across this House are with her husband Greg, her 18-month-old daughter Orla and her wider family.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman for paying tribute to Lydia Menzies, who was a very valued member of this House staff and a distinguished clerk. She served on several committees, including his, and was in the table office for a period, and many members will have come across her there. I have always found in the table office the wonderful service they provide in helping members to avoid mistakes and to enable them to craft their questions in a way that will be orderly. And she was very helpful to me when I was visiting the table office. She was seconded for a period to the Department of International Trade, so also had some experience of government. And she was also a great teacher and source of inspiration to colleagues. Her early death is a great loss to the House service, and I pass on my condolences to her husband Greg and to her daughter Orla. Eternal rest grant unto her, O Lord, and may her soul and the souls of all the faithful departed, by the mercy of God, rest in peace.
Can I just also have my comments to say I have sent a letter to the family. It was a shock to all of us about Lydia's death. She's been robbed from this house far too soon and from her family. She had a great career ahead of her. It is a sad time, but as you say, all our thoughts and prayers go to the family. Pauline.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I thank my right honourable friend for listening to the chairman of the International Development Select Committee and me about keeping that committee, because we recognise its value, and I'm really pleased to see that he does too. My question is related to the hospitality business, which has been raised before. Many of them have spent not just thousands of pounds, but tens of thousands of pounds to make themselves COVID secure. But in Tier 3, they can't open at all. They can do takeaways. They are losing money hand over fist. Could we have a statement or a debate in government time to look at the plight of the hospitality business, because in my constituency, many of the hospitality businesses are COVID-free but can't be used. That's not logical. Thank you.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm grateful for my honourable friend's approval of our decision to keep the Overseas Aid Committee going. She and the chairman of the committee made a very compelling case in meetings with me and with others. As regards the hospitality sector, the government absolutely appreciates the enormous sacrifices that businesses in the hospitality sector have made to ensure that their premises are COVID secure. The restrictions placed on them have not been done lightly, but for the clear need to suppress the coronavirus, and it is right that the government should support the sector how it can. The rent is being covered by cash grants worth up to £3,000 for each month a business is forced to close, and we estimate that this will cover rent for around 90% of small and medium retail, hospitality and leisure properties in England. Pay is being covered by furlough, with employers only paying national insurance and pension contributions, and businesses facing reduced demand in tiers 2 and 3 can receive cash grants worth up to £2,100 a month. But as I have already said to other honourable members, it is quite right that this is brought to the floor of the House, because this is how we carry out our historic responsibility of seeking redress of grievance.
Mark Tarmy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Yesterday, the front page of the FT informed this House that the government would not be applying the tariffs awarded by the WTO against the United States. This may well have a devastating impact on tens of thousands of jobs at Airbus and its suppliers and the UK steel industry. But no statement to this House, not even a measly written statement. So can we have an urgent debate on why this government is happy to sell British jobs down the river to the fag end of the Trump administration?
Madam Speaker, the Department did notify 2 select committees about its intention and wrote to the chairman of those select committees notifying them, so Parliament was informed, though I share his view that a written statement would have been preferable, and I'm passing that view on to the Department. As regards the issue of tariffs, tariffs are the reverse of mercy. Mercy is known to bless both the giver and the receiver, but tariffs harm both the payer and the imposter of the tariff. And therefore, removing tariffs, encouraging free trade, is something that we should always welcome. It is good economic policy.
Dr. Kieran Mullen.
Mr. Speaker, employability organisations like Safe Opportunities and CTEC Plus, employers like AO.com and charities like Community Recycle Cycles work incredibly hard in my constituency to secure employment opportunities for people with disabilities. Like me, they're concerned about the impact of the coronavirus on jobs going forward and their ability to carry on with that work. Can the Leader inform us what opportunities we might have coming forward to raise these really important issues on behalf of our constituents who struggle with employment and disability?
Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend makes an important point. Supporting people with disabilities to find dignified and fulfilling work is one of the most important things that our welfare system can do. The coronavirus pandemic has posed a huge challenge to our welfare system, and I'm pleased to say that the Department for Work and Pensions has managed to withstand and address them. We are actively working on policies to prevent ill health-related job losses, and we provide specific employment for support for disabled people out of work. Though I would suggest to my honourable friend that he might wish to be called in the pre-adjournment debate, and then he can raise the issues specific to his constituency and praise those firms he is working with to help disabled people find employment.
Ian Paisley.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Prime Minister's 10-point green strategy for the entire economy. I wonder if the Leader of the House agrees with me that the £600 million spent each year through the bus operator grant to subsidise the purchase of diesel fuel for buses is no longer fit for purpose in light of that green strategy? And would he agree to a debate on a policy shift that would allow and encourage the purchase of zero emission buses that would allow for a green transport strategy across the entire country and would increase employment for our entire people?
Madam Deputy Speaker, the government is committed to spending £2 billion of taxpayers' money to improve local bus service and is committed to buses that have low emissions. And I understand some of these buses are made in Northern Ireland, possibly even in the Honourable Gentleman's constituency. So I hope that there will be employment, prosperity and success in his constituency and in Northern Ireland as a whole.
Deanna Davison. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Yesterday I had the incredible privilege of attending a Zoom call with Schools North East and local head teachers from Whitworth Park Academy in Spennymoor and Thornhill Primary in Shildon. And they raised concerns about the cost of COVID on education budgets, particularly with regards to supply teacher provision and also the cost of additional cleaning equipment. But one of the key concerns was that those schools that have worked incredibly hard to balance their budgets and make it work cannot access any extraordinary funding that those who perhaps haven't been as prudent with their finances can access. Yeah. So I'd like to ask my right honourable friend if he would raise this with the Education Secretary to make sure that the views of local head teachers right across the North East are taken into account on this.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I can assure the House that after business questions, I always pass on to all Secretaries of State any points that are relevant to their departments that I feel ought to be raised with them, and then return answers to members accordingly. But it is worth pointing out that we have supported schools throughout the pandemic. They have been able to claim up to £75,000 for unavoidable costs such as the additional cleaning my honourable friend mentions. And my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, announced during the recent spending review that school funding will be increased by £2.2 billion next year. So the government is doing everything that it can to help schools provide the necessary taxpayer money to help them get through this difficult period.
Daniel Zeichner.
The Cambridge Milton Keynes Oxford Arc has been a major project the government's been considering for some years, but the details seem to be lost in MHCLG and the DFT. The highly unpopular road link has been paused for a year. There's still no clarity on whether the East-West Rail Link will be an environmentally friendly electrified line or a diesel line. Could we have a statement from a minister, some minister, to provide some clarity on this subject?
Madam Deputy Speaker, the point I would make is that transport connectivity is absolutely essential to economic growth, and in the arc that he refers to there has been enormous economic growth recently, and ensuring that there is good transport infrastructure will help that go further. As regards the specific debate, I can't promise him one, but it is the great advantage that we have an end-of-term adjournment debate, because I can offer that up to almost everybody for any subject that they may wish to raise.
Elliot Coburn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Great British Pub has had a difficult year, not just being closed for much of it, but also bearing a heavy brunt of the restrictions when they are permitted to open. Pubs, restaurants and hospitality businesses in Carshalton and Wallington have been in touch to tell me about the struggles that they've been having. So could we have a debate about support for hospitality so we can help them thrive once the pandemic has passed?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm noticing that a lot of people are asking about the hospitality sector, and it shows the strength of feeling within the House. I think it may well be something that people will want to raise in the debate on COVID that will take place on Monday. And we do all know the difficulties that pubs in particular have faced in the extraordinary circumstances of this year. I would reiterate that the restrictions that we have placed on them have not been done lightly, but for the clear need to suppress the virus. The Prime Minister announced last Tuesday an additional grant of £1,000 will be provided to all what are referred to so inelegantly as wet pubs, but I think we like to call in this House boozers, in tiers 2 and 3 in December, benefiting around 27,000 businesses. VAT has been cut to 5%. But ultimately, Madam Deputy Speaker, ultimately there will be the broad sunlit uplands, at which point we must support our pubs. It will be our patriotic duty to go and drink a yard of ale.
Vera Hobhouse.
Thank you. Under the Erasmus Plus program, over 250 students study at the University of Bath every year alone. And there are many thousands of students across the country who study under the Erasmus program. And indeed, we cannot underestimate the value it brings, not least in financial terms, to our university. So, in 3 weeks' time, the transition period ends, and the government doesn't seem to have any plan of what it plans to do beyond allowing students who are already on the program to finish it. So the APPG on Erasmus has already asked for a debate on this issue, but short of a debate, can we have a statement of what the government is planning with Erasmus Plus and international student exchange?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I am grateful to the Honourable Lady for raising a question that I know will be of interest to many across the House. Under the withdrawal agreement negotiated with the EU, the UK will continue to participate fully in the current 2014 to 2020 Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps programmes. This means that the projects successfully bid for during the current programmes will continue to receive EU funding for the full duration of the project, including those where funding runs beyond 2020 and the end of the transition period. Negotiations are obviously continuing with the European Union at the moment, but in parallel with the negotiations, the government is continuing to develop a UK-wide domestic alternative to Erasmus Plus as a contingency measure. The Spending Review 2020 provides funding to prepare for a UK-wide domestic alternative to Erasmus Plus in the event that the UK no longer participates in Erasmus Plus to fund outward global education mobilities, which I think means people studying abroad. The government will set out further details in due course, but if the Honourable Lady feels that that isn't a comprehensive enough answer, if she would write to me, I'll take it up further.
Just a gentle reminder that we do have a lot of business to get through this afternoon, a hugely subscribed debate on the High Street. So if we could have fairly succinct questions, obviously, and answers, that would be superb. We now go to Ian Liddell-Granger.
With that in mind, Madam Deputy Speaker, I will just say to my honourable friend, as he knows, there are two plans for local government reform in Somerset. One of them from the districts is an extremely good plan, and it will restore our wonderful county back to its grandeur. The other from the County Council, Dictorial County Council, just doesn't cut the mustard and is rubbish. But the panic now setting into the management there is getting embarrassing. County staff have been told they're not to allow difficult questions to the management or the councillors. In these sort of desperate intimidation, this was used by the Vikings. And we need a full debate to expose the County Council's tactics and the bullying that they're up to. My right honourable friend knows that King Alfred beat Guthrum and the Vikings retreated to Essex, obviously. Noon in Somerset surely deserves such a fate.
We'll briefer even than that in future.
Madam Deputy Speaker, Somerset is the glory of our nation, and a whole united Somerset would be of great advantage to the United Kingdom, and it is worth remembering that if Alfred hadn't retreated to the Somerset levels and worked out how to defeat the Danes, our country would never have achieved the greatness that it has achieved.
Jessica Morden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Please can we have a debate on the fast growth of the buy now, pay later sector, as highlighted this week by Martin Lewis in the Treasury Select Committee. These firms are targeting predominantly under 30s who are shopping online in the run-up to Christmas with what is an explosive form of credit that may leave many in debt, and even some in the industry acknowledge that this form of credit needs to be regulated.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Lady once again raises a really important issue at Business Questions. I'm grateful to her. Whenever new forms of credit come along, they often produce risks that people aren't aware of until some time has passed, at which point it's too late to do anything. So I think looking at these things early on is important. I think from the government's point of view, we had better wait for the Treasury Select Committee's report and see what it recommends in this direction, but she is right to highlight the risks of credit, particularly to younger people.
Mark Fletcher.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last Saturday, a gentleman called Simon Royce Dexter was taken ill in the mighty Shirebrook in my constituency. A group of young adults were nearby. They called an ambulance, looked after Simon, and kept everybody calm during the incident. Simon wrote on Facebook afterwards that Keen, Max, Charlie, Megan, Keegan, Shay, and many others were a credit to their parents and to their community. So in that spirit, can we have a debate on community champions so that we can praise not only these fine young people, but the dozens who have been made heroes of Bolsover in this most difficult of years?
Madam Deputy Speaker, it is wonderful to hear what my honourable friend says, and that encouraging that young people who often get a bit of a bad press are actually heroes too. So may I join him in congratulating Keen, Max, Darby, Megan, and the others who were community champions, who got involved, who modelled themselves on the Good Samaritan and didn't walk by. The Community Champions scheme will support those groups at greatest risk from COVID-19 to ensure key public health advice is understood and safer behaviours are followed. But it seems to me that people can do things, can be Good Samaritans, without being told what to do by Her Majesty's government.
Lillian Greenwood.
Deputy Speaker, yesterday the Joseph Rowntree Foundation published a report describing a rising tide of destitution across the UK, including the shocking finding that the number of children experiencing destitution rose by 52% between 2017 and 2019. This means families unable to access absolute essentials, a roof over their heads, food, heating and lighting, clothing and footwear and basic toiletries. We know that food banks and charities like Shareware and ShoeAid are doing incredible work to try and help. But as the report says, in a society like ours, this is intolerable. Can we have a debate about how this government's policies have led to such a shameful situation and the urgent measures needed to address it?
Well, the Rowntree Foundation is one of the gloomiest bodies around, and it ignores the success of the Conservative Party in government, that we have doubled free childcare to eligible working parents and will establish a £1 billion childcare fund, giving parents the support that they need and freedom to look after their children. We're having a £400 million scheme to support children and families and the most vulnerable over the winter and through 2021. Child poverty has gone down in absolute levels by 100,000 since 2010. So there is a good, strong record, and we should be proud of that. There's always more to do, but more is being done.
Deputy Speaker, as the National Infrastructure Commission will be publishing their recommendations on the integrated rail plan next week, could my right honourable friend provide an opportunity for us to impress on the government that there is cross-party support for the HS2 East Midlands hub to be at Towton and the eastern leg to extend to Leeds? We cannot level up in part, we must level up in full.
My honourable friend is right to be a champion for levelling up, and the integrated rail plan will focus on sequencing and delivering transformational rail improvements along the HS2 and Northern Powerhouse rail routes so that their benefits are delivered to communities as quickly as possible. On the eastern leg, the integrated rail plan will consider how to sequence delivery to ensure that the benefits are realised sooner and to ensure it is integrated with plans for Northern Powerhouse Rail and other rail investment projects. I recognise that there are concerns about what the NIC is likely to suggest in its report, but as an independent body, it is right that we wait to see what they have to say and in their evaluation of the evidence in undertaking their assessment. Once the report is published, ministers will then consider their conclusions. So I hope that is a degree of reassurance to my honourable friend.
Patrick Grady.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I wonder if I could ask you to pass on to Mr Speaker thanks and congratulations to everyone involved in the outdoor socially distanced carol service that took place in New Palace Yard yesterday. It was a lovely occasion. I wonder if we could ask the Leader of the House, though, if we could maybe have a debate on sovereignty, because it seems to be part of the briefing pack that his backbenchers have, to keep banging on about how the United Kingdom is about to become an independent sovereign nation. And I wonder if that means it's government policy that other EU members, such as Germany, France, Spain and the rest of them, are somehow not independent sovereign nations, because I think that would be news to them. And if he does think that sovereignty is so important, can he confirm that next year in May he will support the sovereign right of the people of Scotland to determine the form of government best suited to their needs?
Madam Deputy Speaker, there will be an election in Scotland, and whoever wins it will form the government in Holyrood. That is an obvious state of democracy. It's also an obvious state of democracy that people voted in 2014 to remain part of the United Kingdom, in the great wisdom of the Scottish people. As regards the point he makes about the UK being independent on the 1st of January, it will be. The other EU member states are the members of a superstate, which is increasingly centralising power under a bureaucracy in Brussels. That is why we voted to leave.
We now go to Dame Cheryl Gillan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last week, the member for Rhondda sent me a message hoping I would vote for the amendment in the names of the member for Basildon and Billericay and himself, and then proceeded to talk out the provision that would have allowed clinically vulnerable MPs to participate remotely in debates. His message was an empty gesture. Twice this motion has been blocked, and it means that all elected MPs are not treated the same in this House. I believe this is an affront to democracy, especially when unelected members in the other place can participate remotely in debates. It is a shameful position for the Mother of Parliaments and a very poor international example. Mr. Speaker and the Speaker's office have been supported throughout on this appalling situation, but can the Leader of the House please bring back this motion, perhaps as a 90-minute debate at the end of the day, so we do not continue to gag vulnerable MPs and we allow them to contribute to debates. Otherwise, it makes a mockery of business questions. What is the point of requesting a debate when people like me cannot take part in it?
Madam Deputy Speaker, my right honourable friend knows the sympathy I have with her, and that is why we brought forth the motion to allow her to participate in debates along with others who are clinically vulnerable. I think it is quite extraordinary that the debate was talked out, indeed was talked out by somebody talking out his own amendment, which is an unusual use of parliamentary procedure. I can assure my right honourable friend that our efforts in this regard are kept under review. I would very much like it to be possible to allow people who are seriously clinically vulnerable to be able to participate, but I can't give her any firm date at the moment.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'll just say to the Leader of the House, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, based in my constituency, produces high-quality research in order to transform our society and address those very tragic issues of poverty. Madam Deputy Speaker, I wanted to raise the issue of universities and to ask the Leader if he'd make time during business next week, particularly if time becomes available, to debate the pressures on universities in dealing with the return of term next term in order to control the pandemic. Issues such as isolation payments for students, testing for students from home and overseas, and also addressing that issue of what's going to happen with accommodation for students not being able to return to that accommodation and payment for that needs to be held, and therefore will he make that time available?
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Rowntree Foundation is a famously left-wing organisation. It always takes up left-wing causes, and that's not a surprise. That's what it does. So what I would say in relation to a debate on COVID and universities, there is the debate on Monday on COVID generally, and I think that would be a very good opportunity to bring up these issues, which I recognise are important and where universities will want formal answers from the government.
Elaine Saxby.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Having heard from the tourism and hospitality industry in Devon this week, I am gravely concerned that Tier 2 could be the death knell for a huge number of these businesses. Would my right honourable friend secure government time to debate how this vital sector can survive when households cannot meet indoors in Tier 2, yet are entitled to far less support than the revenue they are missing?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I will reiterate what I've said before, that these decisions were not taken lightly and that there is support available. I understand exactly the point my honourable friend is making, and I am very aware that this is a point raised more than any other point during this set of business questions. I would say in terms of a specific debate, the debate on Monday will be an opportunity to raise it, but I can also assure her that the points made by her and other honourable and right honourable members will be passed on within government.
25 withdrawn, so we go to Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I joined with others in wishing my Jewish constituents a very happy Shag Urim Samash. Yesterday, the Prime Minister gave comfort to the 3.6 million leaseholders who are in unsafe buildings because of unsafe cladding, that they would not have to pay for the remediation of that cladding. However, the position is that the £1.6 billion fund allocated by the government runs out on the 31st of December this year. And as such, there is no plan yet for what happens in 2021 to remediate that cladding, or indeed to provide funding for the work to be carried out. So will my right honourable friend arrange for the Secretary of State or a Minister to come to the House next week and make a statement on what is going to be done to give comfort to the leaseholders as we go into 2021?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I think some comfort has been brought forward with the most significant building reforms, building safety reforms in almost 40 years, providing £1.6 billion of taxpayers' money to speed up the removal of unsafe cladding, making homes safer sooner. Almost 80% of buildings with dangerous Grenfell-style cladding have had it removed or in the process of doing so, rising to 97% in the social housing sector. Over 100 buildings have started remediation on site in 2020 so far, despite the continuing backdrop of the global pandemic, more than in the whole of 2019. And we're clear that works to remove unsafe ACM cladding must be completed by the end of 2021. So I hope this will provide some reassurance to leaseholders, but I accept there are others in difficult circumstances, and my honourable friend is right to raise this issue.
John Speller.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Leader of the House just stressed that we were coming out of the EU on January the 1st. But of course that forces us to look at government purchasing rules after then. So locally and nationally, government can properly support British firms, workers and communities. Now on this, I've been in correspondence with Cabinet Office Minister Lord Agnew, who has been very helpful, if I may say. And he informs me that we are developing a package of proposals to reform the UK's procurement regulations. He goes on to say, we still plan to publish our proposals later this year and bring forward legislation when parliamentary time allows. This is on the 2nd of December. So can we have a debate so we can demand ministers and especially civil servants get a move on, enable us to behave like every other major European and industrial economy and back our own businesses and our own people?
Madam Deputy Speaker, there is more joy in heaven over the one sinner who repenteth than the 99 who never needed to repent in the first place. So I'm delighted to see the right honourable gentleman becoming such an ardent Eurosceptic and welcoming the advantages of leaving the European Union in that we can set our own procurement rules, and if we choose we can help local firms and British businesses. That will be a matter for us to decide as a country, and my noble friend, the noble Lord Agnew, has written to the right honourable gentleman and set out the position pretty clearly.
We now go to John Barron.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And following the answer given to the Right Honourable Member for Chesham and Amersham, may I press the Leader further on virtual participation in debates and endorse the opinions of the committee procedure that we should complete the debate started on the 24th of November and allow all members to fully contribute in the chamber on behalf of their constituents. He and I shared the same trenches when campaigning for an EU referendum, yet many of us will be unable to contribute if and when EU trade deal votes come before the chamber.
Madam Speaker, my honourable friend will be able to vote because there has been a system set up for proxy votes. We had 2 hours of debate on this issue, and some honourable members deliberately decided to talk it out and not allow the House to come to a conclusion. We notice in business questions the pressure of time for debates from the Backbench Business Committee, from members asking for debates on specific subjects. Having provided 2 hours of debate, it is difficult to know what more the government could have done.
Siobhan McDonough.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Will the Leader of the House find time for a debate on the Ministry for Department, Communities and Local Government's engagement with faith groups? The Department's faith engagement review closes tomorrow night, but ironically and shockingly, they quietly removed Ahmadi Muslims from the list of Muslim denominations after angry representations from radical groups such as Khatmi Nabawat. Given that His Holiness, the head of the Ahmadi faith, and thousands of Ahmadis have sought asylum and support and safety in the UK because of precisely this sort of persecution in Pakistan, isn't it shocking that a department of the British government would seem to act in a similar way?
Madam Deputy Speaker, may I begin by thanking the Honourable Lady for doing something that she doesn't know that I know she's doing and helping a member of my parliamentary team who happens to be her constituent. And I'm very grateful for that and much appreciate what is being done for the member of my team. The point she raised on the Ahmadis is deeply concerning, and I assure her I will take it up with the Department of Housing, Communities and Local Government. It should not be for other groups to decide which groups are listed. It should be for groups themselves to determine whether or not they are identified as specific groups.
Jonathan Gullis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Like many others, it was a delight to spend Small Business Saturday in Stoke-on-Trent North, Kidsgrove and Torque, visiting local retailers like Golden Hill Garden Centre, Scott Barbers in Butt Lane, Bearwell Art Gallery in Burslem, Abacus Books and Cards in Milton, and the lovely Margaret Thelwell with her vanilla custards at Tunstall Indoor Market. So does my right honourable friend agree that it is important we back our local high streets after they've made so many sacrifices to protect us and our NHS? And can we find parliamentary time to celebrate local independent retailers?
Madam Deputy Speaker, Margaret's vanilla custards at the Tunstall Indoor Market seem mouth-wateringly good for those of us who have a sweet tooth. And my honourable friend is right to raise the importance of supporting our high streets during these difficult times. And Small Business Saturday was a great opportunity to show support for businesses across the country. The government has supported businesses throughout the pandemic, approving nearly £1.4 million bounce-back loans for small and micro businesses worth over £42 billion and approving nearly 80,000 coronavirus business interruption loans worth nearly £18.5 billion. But if we all follow the lead of my honourable friend and visit shops like Golden Hall Garden Centre, Scott's Barbers, Burwell Art Gallery, Abacus Cards, we will find that our bank balance may be lower, but the high street will be higher.
Debate later. Liz Saville-Roberts.
Diolch yn fawr Prylefarydd. A disturbing development this year is the use of military camps in Folkestone and Penally to house asylum seekers. The Home Office is shrouding its actions in secrecy by not releasing details of the scoping exercise used to select camps, to reportedly using non-disclosure agreements to prevent refugee support groups delivering winter clothing from telling the outside world what is happening inside. With legal challenges being prepared, will he make time for a debate on the use of military camps for this purpose?
Madam Deputy Speaker, immigration policy is evolving at the moment as we leave the European Union, and we are committed to delivering a firmer, fairer, points-based immigration system and ensuring that people who are here legally and legitimately. This, of course, also has to be done humanely and respect people's individual dignity. And that is, I believe, what the government is doing. But I would say to the Honourable Lady that if she were to raise this at the adjournment debate next Thursday, it would be an opportunity to get a ministerial response.
Jacob Young.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Across the country and in towns like Eston, our high streets have large empty units on them that get in the way of much needed redevelopment. Eston Square has been held back by the precinct building, like Redcare's